I said put it down. Kids like you don't belong in here. These were the shocking words that echoed through Toy World that Saturday afternoon, directed at an innocent 8-year-old girl named Zoe Thompson. A bright little girl in her neat school uniform, clutching her small backpack, her eyes wide with fear and confusion as store manager Linda Brennan towered over her with pure hatred in her voice. Zoe had simply been looking at a science kit, waiting for her father to finish his business call in the food court, when this woman decided to unleash her racist venom on a child who had done absolutely nothing wrong. But what Linda Brennan didn't know in that moment of cruelty was that someone very important was about to walk through those doors and end her career forever. You see, sometimes the universe has a way of delivering justice when we least expect it. And this story is about to become one of the most satisfying examples of karma you'll ever hear. If you're already feeling your blood boil at how this manager treated an innocent child, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because this story is just getting started, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. But before we dive into how this racist manager got exactly what she deserved, I have to ask you this. What would you do if you witnessed an adult treating a child this way in public? Let me know in the comments below, because your answer might surprise you. Now, let me tell you exactly how this day began and why Linda Brennan was about to face the most humiliating moment of her entire life. Let me paint you a picture of the three people whose lives were about to collide in the most unexpected way at Westfield Mall that Saturday afternoon. First, there's 8-year-old Zoe Thompson. This wasn't just any ordinary little girl wandering around a toy store. Zoe was brilliant beyond her years, the kind of child who read science books for fun and could explain how robots work better than most adults. She stood there in her perfectly pressed school uniform, her small backpack neatly positioned on her shoulders, her curious eyes scanning the educational toys with the intensity of a future scientist. Zoe was shy by nature, but when it came to learning, she transformed into this confident little explorer who saw wonder in everything around her. Her father, James Thompson, was a 45-year-old single dad trying to juggle being the CEO of Megatech Corporation with raising his brilliant daughter. James had built an empire in the tech world, but his greatest pride wasn't his corporate success or his millions in revenue. It was Zoe. Ever since her mother passed away 3 years earlier, James had been walking this tightrope between boardroom meetings and bedtime stories, between closing million-dollar deals and helping with math homework. That day, he was finishing up an important business call in the mall's food court, completely unaware that his daughter was about to face something no child should ever experience. And then there was Linda Brennan, the 42-year-old manager of Toy World. Now, Linda had 15 years of retail experience under her belt, and she wore that experience like a badge of authority. But Linda was bitter. Her recent divorce had left her financially struggling and emotionally hardened, and somewhere along the way, she had allowed prejudice and hatred to poison her heart. She looked at the world through a lens of suspicion, especially when it came to people who didn't look like her. So there was Toy World that Saturday afternoon in the upscale Westfield Mall, bustling with families enjoying their weekend shopping. Zoe had just finished her art class and was waiting patiently for her dad, doing what any curious 8-year-old would do in a toy store. She was completely mesmerized by this robotics kit, reading the instructions with the focus of a graduate student. You could see her little mind working, trying to understand how all the pieces would fit together to create something amazing. But the moment Linda spotted Zoe, something dark flickered in her eyes. She muttered under her breath, "Here we go again," as if this innocent child browsing toys was somehow a threat to her store. Can you imagine? An 8-year-old girl in a school uniform, quietly reading, and this woman immediately saw trouble. Then Linda did something that made even her own staff uncomfortable. She raised her voice loud enough for half the store to hear. "Where are this child's parents? They just let them wander around unsupervised." The way she said they carried a venom that made other customers turn their heads. Her own employees exchanged glances, clearly recognizing the hostile tone their manager was using toward a child who was doing absolutely nothing wrong. What Linda didn't realize at that moment was that she was about to make the biggest mistake of her career, targeting the one child who had the power to destroy everything she thought she controlled. Linda Brennan marched across that store floor like she was on some kind of mission, her face twisted with an ugliness that had nothing to do with her appearance and everything to do with what was in her heart. She walked straight up to little Zoe, who was still peacefully reading that robotics kit manual, and the first words out of her mouth were, "Little girl, these toys aren't for you. Where's your mother?" Now, remember, Zoe is 8 years old. She's been raised to be polite and respectful to adults, so despite the harsh tone, she looked up with those innocent eyes and said, "My daddy is finishing a work call in the food court. He'll be here soon." Simple, honest, the truth. But Linda? Linda rolled her eyes so hard, I'm surprised they didn't fall out of her head. "Sure he is," she said with this nasty sarcasm that would make you sick. "Put those toys down before you break something." Here's what makes this even more disgusting. And I want you to really picture this scene. While Linda was harassing this well-behaved little girl, there were white children literally 3 feet away pulling toys off shelves, running around, making noise, and Linda didn't say a single word to them. Not one word. She was completely ignoring actual disruptive behavior to focus on a quiet child who was doing nothing but reading. The racism was so obvious it was painful to watch. But Linda was just getting started with her cruelty. A few minutes later, Zoe, being the curious and intelligent child she was, asked a simple question about how the robotics kit worked. It was actually a really smart question that showed she understood the basic concepts. Any normal adult would have been impressed by how bright this little girl was. Linda's response? She snapped at this child like she was some kind of annoying pest. "You wouldn't understand it anyway. These are educational toys." Educational toys, let that sink in. She was telling an 8-year-old honor student who was clearly fascinated by science that she was too stupid to understand educational toys. A woman shopping nearby heard this exchange and you could see the shock on her face. She couldn't believe an adult was talking to a child this way. But Linda didn't care who was watching. In fact, she got louder and more aggressive. "I need to watch this one closely," Linda announced to the entire store, as if Zoe was some kind of criminal mastermind instead of a little girl waiting for her dad. And that's when Linda's behavior went from disgusting to absolutely unhinged. She started following Zoe around the store like some kind of predator stalking prey. Every time Zoe moved, Linda was right there behind her, making these intimidating comments designed to scare and humiliate a child. "Don't touch that," she would bark whenever Zoe looked at anything. "Put it back," she'd yell if Zoe picked up a toy to examine it. "I'm watching you," she kept repeating, as if this innocent child was planning some elaborate heist. Can you imagine being 8 years old and having a grown adult terrorize you like this? Zoe started to look visibly upset and confused. Her little hands were shaking, and you could see she was trying not to cry. She didn't understand what she had done wrong, because she hadn't done anything wrong. But Linda's racist mind had already decided this child was guilty of something, and she was going to make sure everyone knew it. That's when Linda walked over to one of her coworkers and said something that will make you absolutely furious. These people think they can just take whatever they want. These people. She was talking about an 8-year-old child like she represented some kind of threat to society. The coworker looked uncomfortable, clearly recognizing how inappropriate Linda's behavior was, but Linda was the manager, so no one spoke up. And Linda's power trip was about to get so much worse. She marched over to the store phone and called mall security. Listen to how she described innocent little Zoe. "I have a suspicious unaccompanied minor in my store. She's acting suspicious and probably planning something." Planning something? She was an 8-year-old reading about robots. When security said they'd send someone over, Linda became even more controlling. She wouldn't let Zoe sit down. She wouldn't let her move freely around the store. She made this child stand in one spot like she was under arrest, just watching her with this hateful stare that would haunt your nightmares. Zoe was starting to get really scared now. She kept looking toward the food court, hoping to see her father coming, but he was still on his important business call, completely unaware that his daughter was being psychologically tortured by a racist store manager. If you're feeling sick to your stomach right now, smash that subscribe button, because what happens next is going to restore your faith in justice, and you absolutely need to see how this monster gets exactly what she deserves. But here's where Linda's racism became so obvious that even the most oblivious person couldn't ignore it anymore. A white family walked into the store. Mom, Dad, and their son, who looked to be about Zoe's age. The moment they entered, it was like Linda transformed into a completely different person. She practically skipped over to them with this huge fake smile and said in the sweetest voice you've ever heard, "Welcome to Toy World. Let me know if you need anything." Their little boy immediately ran over to the expensive electronics section and started grabbing toys, pushing buttons, making noise, pulling things off shelves. You know what Linda did? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. In fact, she kept smiling and chatting with the parents about how boys will be boys and how it's so nice to see children who appreciate quality toys. Meanwhile, she kept glancing over at Zoe with pure hatred in her eyes, continuing to make this innocent child stand in one spot like she was some kind of dangerous criminal. The contrast was so stark, so obvious, so disgusting, that other customers started noticing and getting uncomfortable. Some people were starting to whisper and point. A few were even pulling out their phones because they couldn't believe what they were witnessing. But Linda was so blinded by her racism that she didn't care who was watching. She was determined to humiliate this child, and nothing was going to stop her. That's when Linda crossed a line that should land someone in jail. She marched back over to Zoe and said, "I need you to empty your backpack. Now." Zoe looked confused and scared. "Why?" she asked in this tiny, frightened voice. "Just checking what you might have taken," Linda announced, loudly enough for half the store to hear. Let me repeat that. This grown woman was accusing an 8-year-old child of being a thief in front of a store full of people, with absolutely no evidence, no reason, nothing except the color of Zoe's skin. Poor Zoe, terrified and not understanding what was happening, opened her little school backpack with shaking hands. Linda dumped everything out right there on the floor for everyone to see. You know what was in that backpack? Homework, art supplies from her class, a juice box, some crayons, a book about space exploration, the innocent belongings of a bright little girl who loved learning. But Linda wasn't satisfied. She went through every single item, holding up Zoe's homework like it was evidence of some crime, examining her crayons like they were stolen goods, making a huge show of this investigation while customers stared in horror at what was happening. Several people were now openly filming because they couldn't believe an adult would treat a child this way. Others were looking around for mall security or someone in authority to stop this madness. But Linda just kept going, completely drunk on her power and her hatred, having no idea that she was about to face the consequences of a lifetime. Now I have to ask you something, and I really want you to think about this. Have you ever witnessed something like this happening to a child in public? What did you do? Did you speak up? Or did you stay silent? Let me know in the comments, because this is happening to kids everywhere, and we need to talk about how to protect them. What Linda didn't know was that James Thompson had just finished his business call and was walking toward the toy store, about to witness his daughter being terrorized by a racist who was about to discover she had picked on the wrong family. If you're enjoying this story, hit the subscribe button, type yes, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. What happened next is going to make you absolutely furious. But I promise you, The justice that's coming will be worth every second of anger you're about to feel. After humiliating little Zoe by dumping out her innocent school supplies in front of everyone, Linda Brennan decided she wasn't done destroying this child's day. You could see it in her eyes. This wasn't about store security anymore. This had become personal. This had become about her sick need to exert power over a helpless child. Linda looked around the store at all the customers who were staring at her with disgust and disbelief, and instead of feeling shame for what she had done, she felt justified. In her twisted mind, she was the victim here. She was just doing her job, and all these people were trying to make her look bad for protecting her store. So she decided to escalate things to a level that would destroy an innocent child's sense of safety forever. She picked up the store phone again, and this time, her lies reached a whole new level of evil that would make you question how someone could be so heartless toward a child. Security. This is Linda at Toy World. I need you here immediately. I have a shoplifting suspect, and I need her detained before she leaves the premises. Listen to those words again. A shoplifting suspect. She was calling an 8-year-old girl who had never touched a single item inappropriately, who had never put anything in her pockets, who had never even moved from the educational toy section, except when Linda forced her to. She was calling this innocent child a shoplifting suspect. But Linda wasn't finished with her lies. Oh no, she was just getting started. The suspect is a young black female, approximately 8 years old, unaccompanied, acting suspiciously around high-value merchandise. I believe she may have concealed items. She may have concealed items. Based on what? Based on absolutely nothing, except Linda's racist assumptions about a child whose only crime was existing while black in her store. The customers around her were listening to this phone call in complete horror. They had witnessed the entire interaction. They had seen Zoe do nothing but look at toys and wait for her father. They had seen Linda's obvious racism and cruelty. And now they were hearing her lie to security to get this child in even more trouble. But here's where Linda's cruelty reached levels that would make a decent person sick to their stomach. Little Zoe, now crying and terrified, her small body shaking with fear, asked through her tears in the smallest, most heartbreaking voice you can imagine, "Can I please call my daddy? He's just in the food court. Please, I just want my daddy." The desperation in that little girl's voice would have melted the heart of anyone with a soul. Here was a child begging for the basic comfort of calling her parent when she was scared and confused. Any decent human being would have immediately allowed her to make that call. But Linda Brennan wasn't a decent human being. Her response will haunt you for the rest of your life. Your daddy can come find you at security if he exists. If he exists, let that sink in. She was implying that this 8-year-old was lying about having a father. She was suggesting that this well-dressed, well-spoken, clearly well-cared-for child was some kind of street kid making up stories. She was adding psychological cruelty on top of the racism she had already subjected this innocent baby to. The way Linda said "daddy" with those sarcastic air quotes was like watching someone kick a puppy. The pure evil in her voice as she dismissed this child's plea for help was something you'd expect from a movie villain, not a real person in a toy store. But it gets worse, so much worse. Zoe started sobbing harder, her little body shaking as the reality of what was happening to her began to sink in. Through her tears, she kept asking in this broken, confused voice, "What did I do wrong? I didn't do anything wrong, please. I just want my daddy." And the heartbreaking truth was, she was absolutely right. She hadn't done a single thing wrong, except exist as a black child in a space where Linda Brennan had decided she didn't belong. This innocent baby was being terrorized for the crime of being born with the wrong skin color. Linda watched this child cry and felt nothing. No remorse, no second thoughts, no human compassion whatsoever. If anything, Zoe's tears seemed to fuel Linda's cruelty even more. She was enjoying this. She was getting some sick satisfaction from watching this little girl suffer. "Stop crying and making a scene," Linda snapped at the terrified child. "You brought this on yourself with your suspicious behavior." Suspicious behavior. An 8-year-old reading instructions on a science kit was suspicious behavior in Linda's racist mind. The other customers were starting to get really uncomfortable. And I mean really uncomfortable. You could see it in their faces, the horror, the disbelief, the anger at what they were witnessing. People were starting to pull out their phones, not just to film, but to call the police, to call mall management, to call someone, anyone who could stop this madness. But Linda was in full power trip mode now, and she wasn't backing down. She was like a shark that had tasted blood in the water. She was going to destroy this child completely, and nothing was going to stop her. The other customers were starting to get really uncomfortable. You could hear people whispering, "This is wrong, and someone needs to stop this." But Linda was in full power trip mode, and she wasn't backing down. When mall security arrived a few minutes later, you could see them taking in the scene. A crying child surrounded by her scattered school supplies, a crowd of angry customers, and Linda standing there like she was some kind of hero who had just caught a dangerous criminal. But Linda wasn't satisfied with just having security there. Oh no. She wanted to make sure this child was completely humiliated and traumatized. So she put on the performance of her life, giving them this completely exaggerated account that would make you think Zoe was some kind of master criminal instead of a scared little girl who just wanted her daddy. "Officers, thank you for getting here so quickly," Linda began, her voice dripping with fake concern. "This child has been acting suspiciously since the moment she entered my store. I first noticed her handling expensive merchandise inappropriately, touching items that are clearly beyond what someone her age should be interested in. Beyond what someone her age should be interested in. She was talking about educational toys in a toy store and suggesting that a bright 8-year-old shouldn't be interested in learning. But Linda was just getting warmed up with her lies. When I approached her to offer assistance, she became evasive and defensive. She claims to be waiting for a parent, but as you can see, no one has come for her. She's been unaccompanied for over an hour now." Over an hour? It had been maybe 20 minutes since James had told Zoe to wait for him at the store, but Linda was rewriting history to make her racism look justified. I became concerned when I noticed her examining high-value items and then looking around nervously, as if she was planning something. When I asked her to show me the contents of her bag, she was reluctant and evasive. Reluctant and evasive? The child had immediately complied with Linda's humiliating demand to empty her backpack. "Based on my 15 years of retail experience," Linda continued, puffing out her chest like this gave her some kind of authority to terrorize children, "I believe she fits the profile of shoplifters we've been dealing with lately. Young, unaccompanied minors who come in, case the joint, and either attempt to steal immediately or return later with accomplices. She fits the profile." There it was again, the barely disguised racism that everyone in that store could hear loud and clear. An 8-year-old in a neat school uniform fit the profile of criminals because she was black. But Linda still wasn't done destroying this child. I also have concerns about her claims regarding this alleged father. No responsible parent leaves a child this young unattended in a public space for this length of time. I suspect she may be a runaway or abandoned child, making up stories to avoid getting in trouble. A runaway. She was calling an 8-year-old in a private school uniform with a backpack full of homework and art supplies a potential runaway. The security guards were looking increasingly uncomfortable with Linda's story. They could see Zoe's school supplies scattered on the floor. They could see her neat uniform and clean appearance. They could hear the obvious lies and exaggerations in Linda's account, but they were in an awkward position. They had to take the store manager's complaint seriously, even though everything about this situation felt wrong. Poor Zoe, through her tears, and with a voice so small you could barely hear it, tried to explain to the security guards what had really happened. "I'm waiting for my daddy like I always do," she whispered, her words interrupted by hiccups from crying so hard. "He's on a work call in the food court. I didn't take anything. I just like looking at the robot kits because I want to be a scientist like my daddy. I didn't do anything wrong." Her innocence was so obvious, her explanation so simple and heartbreakingly honest, that even the security guards looked uncomfortable with the situation they had been called into. Here was a clearly well-cared-for child, articulate, despite her tears, with a reasonable explanation for her presence in the store. But Linda wasn't about to let facts get in the way of her racist narrative. She jumped right back in with more poison. "See what I mean?" Linda said, gesturing at Zoe like she was Exhibit A in a court case. "They always have some elaborate story ready to go. My daddy this, my daddy that. It's textbook behavior for children who are trained to lie when they get caught. Trained to lie." She was suggesting that someone had coached this 8-year-old to be a criminal. "I've been in retail for 15 years, Linda continued, as if this made her some kind of expert in child psychology and criminal behavior. "I know trouble when I see it. I can spot a problem child from a mile away, and this one has been nothing but red flags since she walked in here. I know trouble when I see it." She was looking at a crying 8-year-old honor student and calling her trouble because of the color of her skin. One of the security guards, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, tried to de-escalate things. "Ma'am, maybe we could just try calling the number for her father? If he's really in the food court, this could all be cleared up quickly." It was a reasonable suggestion, a logical solution, a way to end this nightmare for everyone involved. But Linda shut it down immediately. "Absolutely not," she said firmly. "We're not enabling this behavior. If there really is a father, he can come looking for her when he realizes she's missing. But I'm not letting this child manipulate us into helping her contact potential accomplices." Accomplices. She was talking about an 8-year-old's father as a potential accomplice in some imaginary crime. By now, the crowd around the store had grown significantly. Word was spreading through the mall that something terrible was happening at Toy World. People were stopping their shopping to witness this injustice, and what they saw was making them furious. That's when something beautiful started happening. Decent people began speaking up, and they weren't being polite about it anymore. A woman who had witnessed the whole thing stepped forward, her voice shaking with anger. "Excuse me, but I've been in this store for the past 30 minutes, and I watched this entire situation unfold. This child has done absolutely nothing wrong. Nothing. She's been polite, quiet, and well-behaved the entire time. What you're doing to her is disgusting and wrong." Another customer, a mother with her own young daughter, chimed in with fire in her voice. "I saw exactly how you treated that white family's child when they came in. Their kid was running around, making noise, pulling toys off shelves, and you were all smiles and sweetness. But this little angel has been standing quietly, and you're treating her like a criminal. This is racism, plain and simple." A man holding his own child added, his voice filled with disgust, "You should be absolutely ashamed of yourself. That little girl is scared out of her mind, and you're the one scaring her. What kind of person terrorizes a child like this?" But instead of recognizing how wrong she was, instead of showing any human decency or backing down, instead of looking around at all the horrified faces staring at her and realizing she had become the villain in this situation, Linda doubled down on her racism and cruelty with a vengeance. "I don't need a lecture from any of you," she declared loudly, her voice filled with righteous indignation, like she was the victim in this situation. "I'm doing my job. I'm protecting this store, these customers, and this merchandise from theft and vandalism." She gestured dramatically toward little Zoe, who was still crying and shaking with fear. "If you people can't see that I'm dealing with a potential shoplifter here, then you're part of the problem. I have a responsibility to prevent theft and maintain security in my store. This child fits the profile of troublemakers we've been dealing with, and I'm not going to apologize for being vigilant. My store, like she owned the place." like she had the right to terrorize children because of a retail manager badge and 15 years of selling toys. "If you don't like how I run my establishment," Linda continued, getting louder and more aggressive, "then you can take your business elsewhere. But I'm not going to let political correctness stop me from protecting what's mine." Political correctness. She was calling basic human decency and not terrorizing children political correctness. The crowd was getting bigger now, and people were getting angrier by the minute. Some were openly filming the situation. Others were demanding to speak to mall management, and a few were even suggesting someone call Child Protective Services, because what they were witnessing looked like child abuse. More people began speaking up, their voices creating a chorus of condemnation that should have made Linda realize how far over the line she had gone. "This is absolutely sickening. Someone needs to call the police on her. That poor baby, look how scared she is. This is 2024, not 1954. How is this happening?" But Linda just kept standing there, arms crossed, glaring at this sobbing 8-year-old, like she was the villain in this situation instead of the victim. She had dug herself in so deep that she couldn't back down now without admitting she was wrong, and her pride and racism wouldn't let her do that. Meanwhile, 200 yards away in the food court, something was finally happening that would change everything. James Thompson had been in what might have been the most important business call of his career. He was negotiating a merger that could potentially double the size of his company, dealing with lawyers and executives and millions of dollars in contracts. His phone had been on silent mode, and he had been completely focused on the complex details of the deal. But as he finally wrapped up the call and reached for his coffee, something caught his eye that made his blood run cold. His phone screen was lit up with notifications. 7 missed calls from the mall's main number, 3 voicemails, 2 text messages from mall security. His stomach dropped like he was falling off a cliff, because he knew with absolute certainty that Zoe was supposed to be waiting for him at the toy store, and the only reason the mall would be calling him repeatedly was if something was terribly, terribly wrong. James didn't even take the time to listen to the voicemails. His hands were shaking as he grabbed his briefcase and started running toward Toy World. His expensive Italian leather shoes clicking against the mall floor as he dodged other shoppers, his mind racing with every possible worst-case scenario. Had Zoe been hurt? Had she wandered off and gotten lost? Had someone taken her? The thoughts racing through his mind were every parent's worst nightmare. As he got closer to the toy store, he could see something that made his panic intensify tenfold. There was a crowd of people gathered outside Toy World, much larger than any normal shopping crowd. People were pointing, talking animatedly, holding up phones, and through the crowd, he could see the unmistakable uniforms of security guards and what looked like police officers near the entrance to the store. His daughter was somewhere in the middle of that chaos, and he had absolutely no idea what nightmare she had been living through while he was focused on business deals and profit margins. James pushed through the crowd, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears, completely unaware that he was about to walk into a scene that would change his life forever and deliver the kind of justice that would become legendary. His daughter was somewhere in the middle of that chaos, and he had no idea what nightmare she had been living through while he was focused on business. If you're a parent watching this, hit that subscribe button right now, because what's about to happen next will give you chills. Justice is coming, and it's going to be absolutely epic. James Thompson was about to arrive at the worst scene any parent could imagine, but he was also about to deliver the most satisfying dose of justice you've ever witnessed. Linda Brennan had no idea that her career, her reputation, and her entire world were about to come crashing down around her. What happened when James Thompson finally reached that toy store is going to give you chills, and I promise you, the justice you're about to witness will be absolutely perfect. James pushed through the crowd of people outside Toy World, his heart pounding with terror about what he might find. As a single father, his worst nightmares always involved something happening to Zoe while he wasn't there to protect her. But nothing could have prepared him for the scene that greeted him when he finally made it through that crowd. There, in the middle of the store, surrounded by security guards and mall police, was his 8-year-old daughter. His brilliant, sweet, innocent little girl was hysterical, and I mean absolutely hysterical. Tears were streaming down her face. Her small body was shaking uncontrollably, and she was in that state of panic that only comes when a child has been truly terrorized. The moment Zoe saw her father, she broke away from the security guards and ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist and sobbing into his expensive business suit. "Daddy, Daddy, I didn't do anything wrong. I promise I didn't do anything wrong." She said I was stealing, but I wasn't. I was just looking at the robot kits like always. I didn't touch anything I wasn't supposed to. Please believe me, Daddy, I didn't do anything wrong. Hearing his daughter's desperate pleas, seeing her in this state of absolute terror, James felt something inside him snap. This was his baby girl, his whole world, and someone had hurt her. Someone had made her feel like this while he wasn't there to protect her. James knelt down and wrapped his arms around Zoe, his own hands shaking with rage as he held her close. "It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here now. You're safe. I believe you, baby girl. I know you didn't do anything wrong." But even as he comforted his daughter, his eyes were scanning the store, looking for whoever was responsible for putting his child through this nightmare. And that's when he saw her. Linda Brennan was standing about 10 feet away, arms crossed, watching this emotional reunion with what can only be described as smug satisfaction. She looked pleased with herself, like she had just solved some major crime instead of terrorizing an innocent child. James gently pulled back from Zoe, wiping the tears from her face. "Stay right here with me, okay? Daddy's going to fix this." Then he stood up, all 6 feet and 2 inches of him, and fixed his gaze on Linda Brennan. When James Thompson was angry, really angry, he didn't yell or lose control. Instead, he became very, very calm, very quiet, very controlled, and that controlled fury was infinitely more terrifying than any screaming fit could ever be. "Excuse me," James said in a voice that was perfectly polite but carried undertones that would make your blood freeze. "I'm Zoe Thompson's father. Would someone please explain to me exactly what's going on here?" Linda stepped forward with this arrogant confidence that showed she had absolutely no idea what kind of mistake she had just made. She looked at James, this well-dressed, obviously successful businessman, and apparently decided that she could charm her way out of this situation. "Oh, Mr. Thompson? Thank goodness you're finally here," Linda said with fake concern dripping from her voice. "I was beginning to worry that your daughter might actually be unaccompanied, which would have been a whole different kind of problem." "Your daughter." The way she said it, with that subtle emphasis, made it clear that she was already judging James as a parent. "I'm Linda Brennan, the manager here at Toy World," she continued, puffing herself up with authority. "I want to assure you that I took completely reasonable precautions with your daughter's behavior today. Given the suspicious circumstances and the profile of individuals we've been having trouble with lately, I felt it was necessary to involve security for everyone's safety." Reasonable precautions, suspicious circumstances, the profile of individuals. Every word out of her mouth was dripping with barely disguised racism, and James was hearing every single coded message loud and clear. But Linda wasn't done explaining herself. Oh no, she was just getting started with her justifications. "I hope you understand, Mr. Thompson, that I was simply doing my job. Your daughter was unaccompanied for an extended period. She was handling expensive merchandise inappropriately, and when questioned, she became evasive about her circumstances. These are all red flags that any experienced retail manager would recognize." James listened to this entire explanation with that same terrifyingly calm expression. When Linda finished her little speech, he asked one simple question that cut right through all her excuses. What exactly did my daughter do? The question was so direct, so simple, that Linda actually seemed taken aback. She had expected him to be grateful for her vigilance, not to question her actions. Well, as I explained, Linda said, her confidence wavering slightly, she was engaging in suspicious activities. She was touching merchandise without any apparent intention to purchase. She was loitering in the store without proper supervision, and she was unattended for an inappropriate length of time. James's voice remained perfectly calm, but there was steel underneath it. So you're telling me that my daughter's crimes were playing with toys in a toy store while waiting for her parent? It's not that simple, Linda protested, but you could hear the defensiveness creeping into her voice. You have to understand, we've been having problems with certain types of customers, and your daughter fit the profile of... She stopped herself, but not quite in time. Fit the profile of what? James asked quietly. Linda realized she had walked into dangerous territory, but her racism was so ingrained that she couldn't help herself. Well, you never know with these, unaccompanied minors from certain backgrounds, they often... She was trying to dance around it, but everyone in that store knew exactly what she was saying. And James Thompson knew it too. That's when James did something that made everyone in the store go completely silent. He pulled out his phone, not frantically, not dramatically, just calmly and deliberately, and then he made a call that would change Linda Brennan's life forever. Sarah? It's James. I need you to patch me through to corporate headquarters immediately. Yes, I know what time it is. This is urgent. Also, get legal department and HR on the line. I don't care if you have to wake people up. Linda watched this phone call with growing confusion. Why was this parent calling lawyers? What was corporate headquarters? Why was he talking like he had the authority to demand that legal departments be woken up on a Saturday? Sarah, I need you to pull up the file on our Toy World subsidiary. Yes, the entire chain. I also need the employment records for the Westfield Mall location. Specifically, I need everything on the manager, Linda Brennan. At the mention of her name, Linda felt the first flutter of real worry. But she was still too arrogant, too convinced of her own righteousness, to understand what was happening. You can't just call and demand people's employment records, Linda said with nervous laughter. That's not how this works. You can't just... James held up one finger to silence her, never taking his eyes off her as he continued his conversation. Yes, Sarah? I want Linda Brennan terminated immediately, effective right now. Within hours, videos of Linda's racist behavior went viral. The hashtag #JusticeForZoe trended as millions watched the shocking footage. Linda's social media history revealed more racist posts, making her unemployable overnight. But James didn't stop with her firing. He implemented company-wide anti-discrimination training across all Megatech stores and established policies that banned racial profiling with immediate termination. His program became a model for major retailers nationwide. Meanwhile, James comforted Zoe over ice cream, explaining that Linda's hate came from her own heart and had nothing to do with Zoe's worth. When Zoe asked why Linda was so mean, James explained some people have hate inside them, but that doesn't make it right. I want to help protect other kids, Zoe said with determination that reminded James of her mother. I'll help you do exactly that, he promised. And she did. Zoe grew up fighting discrimination, started anti-bullying clubs in school, and eventually became a civil rights lawyer. She founded the Zoe Thompson Foundation, protecting other children from retail racism. Linda never worked in retail again, becoming a cautionary tale about the consequences of hatred. But this story isn't about Linda getting punished. It's about the power of standing up for what's right and protecting innocent children from adult hatred. Every child deserves to feel safe and respected. When hatred tries to dim their light, there should always be someone there to help them shine brighter. That's the real lesson. Good people have the power to create change, protect innocence, and build a better world. And sometimes that's exactly what happens when you mess with the wrong family. But the story wasn't over yet. Because Linda Brennan was about to show everyone just how truly pathetic a person could become when their racism finally caught up with them. As security approached to escort her out, Linda went into full panic mode. She was literally on her knees in the middle of the toy store, grabbing at James's expensive suit pants like some kind of desperate beggar, completely oblivious to the fact that dozens of customers were still filming her humiliating breakdown. "Please, Mr. Thompson, please don't do this to me," she sobbed, all traces of her earlier arrogance completely gone. Her mascara was running down her face in black streaks, her hair was disheveled from her frantic gestures, and her voice had become this high-pitched wail that was equal parts pathetic and infuriating. "I made a mistake. I can admit that now, but you don't understand. I have a mortgage. I have a teenage daughter who needs me. I have car payments and credit card bills, and I'm already behind on everything because of my divorce. I can't lose this job. This job is all I have left." The pathetic irony wasn't lost on anyone. She was begging a black father not to destroy her life after she had just tried to destroy his 8-year-old daughter's sense of safety and self-worth. She was pleading for mercy after showing absolutely none to an innocent child. But Linda's desperation was making her say things that revealed just how deep her racism really went. "I was just trying to do my job," she continued, her voice getting more desperate and shrill with each word. "You have to understand, we've had so many problems with shoplifters lately. Corporate has been putting so much pressure on us to reduce theft. They told us to be vigilant, to watch for suspicious behavior. I was just following orders." Following orders. Like she was some kind of soldier instead of a retail manager who had terrorized a child. "And you know how it is," Linda continued, apparently thinking this would somehow help her case, "with the kind of people who usually cause trouble in stores like these. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've learned to spot the signs. Your daughter, she fit the profile perfectly. I couldn't have known she was different. She fit the profile perfectly." Even in her moment of desperation, Linda couldn't stop herself from being racist. She was literally digging her own grave deeper with every word that came out of her mouth. James looked down at this woman who was literally groveling at his feet, and his expression never changed from that calm, controlled fury that was somehow more terrifying than any screaming rage could have been. "Miss Brennan," he said quietly, his voice carrying such authority that everyone in the store fell silent to listen. "Your behavior today was recorded by multiple customers on their phones. I can see at least a dozen people in this store right now who have video footage of you terrorizing my daughter." Linda's face went even whiter as the full implications of this hit her. She looked around frantically and realized that, yes, there were phones everywhere, all pointed at her, all capturing her racist meltdown for posterity. "That video footage is already being uploaded to social media as we speak," James continued in that same deadly calm voice. "I guarantee you that by tonight, millions of people will have seen exactly how you treat innocent children. Your face, your name, your actions, all of it will be viral within hours." The horror in Linda's eyes was almost comical as she realized that her reputation, her career, her entire life was about to be destroyed by her own racist actions. In today's world, being caught on camera terrorizing a child for racist reasons was a career death sentence, and she knew it. "No, no, no." She started babbling, looking around at all the phones like they were weapons pointed at her. "You can't let them post that. You have to stop them. I have a daughter, she'll see this. Her friends will see this. You can't let them destroy my life." But James wasn't finished destroying her yet. Not even close. "Our security footage will also be reviewed by our legal team," he continued, each word hitting Linda like a physical blow. "Every moment of your interaction with my daughter has been captured in high definition from multiple angles. Every racist comment, every cruel action, every lie you told to security, all of it is documented evidence that will be preserved forever." Linda was hyperventilating now, the reality of her situation finally sinking in completely. She was going to lose everything. Her job, her reputation, her future, all because she couldn't control her racist hatred toward an innocent child. Furthermore, James added, and you could hear the satisfaction in his voice as he delivered what he knew would be the killing blow, you are now banned from all Megatech retail locations. That includes not just every Toy World in the country, but also our electronics stores, our department stores, our specialty shops, our online platforms. Our entire retail empire spans 47 states and includes over 3,000 locations. The magnitude of this ban was staggering. Megatech wasn't just some small company, it was a retail giant that owned dozens of major chains. Being banned from all their properties meant Linda was essentially blacklisted from a significant portion of American retail. If you set foot in any of our properties, James continued, you will be arrested for trespassing. Your photograph and information will be distributed to security teams across the country. You are now persona non grata in the retail world. Linda was making these horrible gasping sounds like she couldn't breathe. The full weight of what she had lost was crushing her, and everyone in the store could see her complete mental breakdown happening in real time. The security guards had reached them now, but Linda made one last desperate attempt to save herself. Clawing at James's clothes like a drowning person, trying to grab onto anything that might keep her afloat. I can change, she screamed, her voice cracking with hysteria. I can take sensitivity training, I can go to therapy, I can learn. Please give me another chance. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean any of it. Her words were coming out so fast they were almost incoherent. Spittle flying from her mouth as she begged for mercy she had never shown to others. I have African American friends. I voted for Obama, twice. I'm not racist. I was just having a bad day. My ex-husband, he's been harassing me, and I'm taking anxiety medication, and I haven't been sleeping, and I just made a mistake. Every excuse she threw out was more pathetic than the last. She was trying to blame her ex-husband, her medication, her mental state, anything except taking responsibility for her own racist actions. Please, Linda continued, now grabbing onto James's jacket with both hands. I didn't know. I didn't know she was your daughter. If I had known who you were, I never would have. And there it was again, the same racist mentality that had gotten her into the situation in the first place. She still didn't understand that the problem wasn't that she had terrorized the wrong child. The problem was that she had terrorized any child at all. James's response was ice cold and final, delivered with the kind of quiet authority that comes from having real power and knowing exactly how to use it. Miss Brennan, he said, gently but firmly removing her hands from his jacket. The fact that you think it matters whose daughter she is tells me everything I need to know about your character. No child should ever be treated the way you treated Zoe today, regardless of who their parents are, what color their skin is, or how much money their family has. He paused, letting that sink in, watching as Linda's face crumpled with the realization that there was no coming back from this. The fact that you would have treated my daughter differently if you had known who I was proves that your apology is meaningless. You're not sorry for being racist. You're just sorry you got caught being racist against someone who had the power to destroy you. Linda opened her mouth to protest, but James held up one hand to stop her. You made your choices today, Miss Brennan. You chose hatred over compassion. You chose cruelty over kindness. You chose to terrorize an innocent child because you thought she was powerless and you thought you could get away with it. Now you get to live with the consequences of those choices. As security took Linda's arms to escort her out, she made one final, desperate attempt to avoid responsibility for her actions. This isn't fair, she yelled, her voice echoing through the store as they pulled her toward the exit. I was doing my job. I was protecting the store. I was following company policy. This is reverse discrimination. This is racism against white people. Even in her final moments as a Toy World employee, Linda Brennan couldn't stop being racist. She was actually claiming that facing consequences for her racist behavior was somehow racism against her. The absolute delusion was breathtaking. "You can't do this to me," she screamed as they dragged her past the crowd of customers. "I have rights. I'll sue. I'll call the media. I'll tell everyone how you treated me. This is America. You can't destroy someone's life just because they made one little mistake." One little mistake. She was calling the systematic terrorization of an 8-year-old child one little mistake. The crowd of customers who had witnessed the entire incident began applauding as Linda was escorted out. Some were cheering, others were taking pictures and videos of her humiliating exit, and more than a few were making comments that would definitely end up on social media. "Good riddance to racist trash. I hope she never gets another job. That poor little girl deserved so much better." This is what happens when racism meets consequences. Justice had been served, and everyone who had watched this innocent child being terrorized felt a deep sense of satisfaction, seeing her tormentor get exactly what she deserved. It was the kind of real-world karma that people dream about, but rarely get to witness. But while the adults were celebrating Linda's downfall, James was focused on the only thing that really mattered: his daughter. Zoe was still clinging to her father, her small body trembling with leftover fear and confusion. The poor little girl had been through an absolute nightmare, and James could see the trauma in her eyes, the way she kept looking around nervously as if expecting someone else to attack her at any moment. James gently picked her up, cradling her against his chest, like he had when she was a toddler. At 8 years old, she was getting a bit big to be carried, but right now she needed that physical comfort, that reassurance that Daddy was there and nothing bad could happen to her anymore. "Come on, sweetheart," he said softly, his voice completely different now, warm and loving and gentle instead of that cold fury he had directed at Linda. "Let's get out of here. How about we go get some ice cream and talk about what happened?" Zoe nodded against his shoulder, still too shaken to speak much. Her little arms were wrapped tightly around his neck, and James could feel her heart still beating fast from the stress and fear of what she had been through. As James carried her out of Toy World, past the crowd of supportive customers, past the security guards, past the scene of her trauma, he kept whispering reassurances in her ear. "You're safe now, baby girl. Daddy's here. That mean lady can never hurt you again. You didn't do anything wrong. Daddy loves you so much. You're safe, sweetheart. You're safe." If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and share with others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.